Now, US presidential race candidate Kamala Harris has a lot to cheer about. As many as 13 national polls conducted till last week showed her racing ahead of her Republican rival Donald Trump. Now, the polls show Harris with a 1.5-point lead when respondents were asked about their voting intentions. But the popular vote only goes so far. It will not determine the election's outcome. Under the electoral college system, Trump could win in November, despite getting fewer votes than Harris, as he did against Hillary Clinton back in 2016 election. Now, a survey poll asked 1,510 likely voters between August 2nd and 4th whom they would vote for. And it found Harris ahead with 48% of the votes to Trump's 45%. Other candidates had 3%, 4% were undecided. Over the same period, Morning Consult surveyed about 11,000 registered voters. 48% said that they would vote for Harris, while it was 44% for Donald Trump. An Issue and Insight TIPP survey showed Harris with a 1-point lead against Trump, 46% to 45%. And between July 30th and August 2nd, YouGov polled about 3,000 likely voters for CBS News. Its survey shows that Harris is leading by 1 point, with 50% saying that she was their preferred choice for president, against 49% say that they would choose Donald Trump. However, in battleground states, the poll found Harris and Trump both tied with 50% of the votes. A University of Massachusetts survey shows that Harris with 43% vote against 40% for Donald Trump. A poll of 3,000 registered voters conducted by the RMG Research between July 29th and 31st shows that Harris has a 5-point lead over Trump, 47% versus 42% for Trump. Now, also another poll registered voters, about 1,000 of them were polled, and that shows that Kamala Harris got 49% and Donald Trump received about 45%. Now, a Lega poll of about 1,000 US residents between July 26th and 28th shows Harris with 49% and Donald Trump at 46%. 4 other national polls show that Harris had a 2-point lead over Trump. And with those numbers, let's quickly go across to our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who is joining us live from New York. Susan, good to see you as always. We have the two big faces, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. We know they're running mates. Where do the two campaigns stand about 3 months ahead of US elections?
Yeah, it does seem like Kamala Harris is enjoying this honeymoon period. What many voters also want to see from Harris, however, and that'll be a determining factor on where voting really stands and where these polls stand, is for her to have a serious press conference and talk about her policies. She hasn't done that yet. So far, she's gaining this momentum because she's not Joe Biden. But it's also important to note that she's enjoying this lead at a time when most Democrats and even independents who said that they didn't want to go to the polls and they didn't have enough enthusiasm when President Biden was the candidate, have switched and said that they will indeed vote and vote for Kamala Harris over Donald Trump. 48% of U.S. adults said that they think that Kamala Harris will win, and another 48% said that they think that President Trump will win. So you see that in some questions, there's this margin of error. They're very tight. But then when it comes to the issue of enthusiasm, age, Kamala Harris is leading. But then you have the issue of the border and the economy still. When pollsters are asking individuals about those issues, they tend to lean towards Donald Trump.
Right. Susan, here's something that I found a little interesting. Remember, Donald Trump had said, and I'm quoting him, that VPs have virtually no impact on elections. Now, while we were doing the guessing game here as to who Kamala Harris will choose as her running mate, interestingly, we also heard a few Americans saying the same thing, that when people go out to vote, they actually think about the president, not so much about the VP. But I want to quickly ask you, is that something that you hear from the fellow Americans as well?
Yeah, you know, what's interesting is the majority of Americans, up to 71% in a recent poll reported by Forbes, didn't know who Tim Walz is. And that's J.D. Vance's number was something around 40 to 50%. So he had a lot more of a name recognition. But ultimately, this is not like a regular election, because these two individuals that are running for vice president and running mates of Harris and Trump, they have so much color and so much history of the comments they've made and the stances that they've taken. And because there's such a stark contrast between them policy-wise, then, their names will be mentioned a lot more during this round of elections. But ultimately, that is for the most part true. Running mates really don't have that much of an impact. But then again, it's a very bizarre situation that we're in. After all, Kamala Harris only had just a few weeks to pick her vice president. And I think that Americans and voters will be eager to understand who Tim Walz really is. Now, is he going to be defined by the Trump camp, or will Tim Walz be able to define himself?
Absolutely, Susan, you make a very, very fair point there. Thank you so much for getting us all those updates from New York. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.